Why, hello there. In this video for the QAP Weekly class, Matt Chang and Bill Witt presented on API testing, which is growing more and more popular as companies try to get into back-end testing for microservices, event-driven architectures, and the like. So, if you're interested in other courses, other classes just like this, feel free to visit qap.dev to see a list of all of the campaigns we have going on, including our monthly meetups, our weekly classes, our open source knowledge base, and all the good stuff that we have going on. And if you're in Utah, USA, you might as well join because this is like the software testing and quality community here. So with that said, enjoy the video and have yourselves a quality day.
All right, thank you for everybody for joining tonight. My name is Matt. Uh, I'll be kind of hosting the session, but Bill will be doing the teaching. Um, a little bit about myself. I joined the Autobots group, let's say about almost 3 years ago, huh? It's been a while. It's about 3 years ago. I started doing a lot of teaching automation with Python and Java and Node. That's how I kind of got started. That's where I met Carlos. Carlos is a great mentor. Um, and we have fun during these Autobots classes. Uh, it's kind of a class, but we also want to make sure this is more of an open forum.
Yeah.
Um, if we end up teaching you guys, then and just leading out the conversation, it's kind of boring for us. We want to make sure that we challenge the instructors as much as the instructors are challenging us in giving us information. Um, Bill put, we do spend a lot of time into trying to prep for this so that we can give you a breadth of knowledge, um, so you can apply it in multiple different ways. So if you have anything that you wanted us to look at, speak up. So, Carlos, did you have any thoughts you want to share before we get started?
No, I don't think so. Just excited to get back into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the past, we always did about 2 hours, but I think that might be a little bit too long. So we're going to target for 1 hour, and then feel free to hang out afterwards if you have any questions. We'll try to stick around and answer any questions we can. This will be a multi-part series, so follow along if you can. And for those of you guys who don't have Postman installed, go download it and install it. That'll help out, so you can follow along. Today we're going to do the manual testing portion. Um, if we get to it, we'll have Bill completely fully automate the manual testing of this stuff. And then, so that'll be the next two sessions, and then we will have the QAP at the end of the month. And then I think the first of next month will be the manual button pushers. They'll have a topic. I still need to figure out what topics they're trying to present. And then after that, I will do the teaching and present and teach you guys how to set up your own Express server, Grafana server, or InfluxDB server with a Grafana dashboard. And we're going to learn about artillery testing and performance testing. So that's why we're kind of leading out with the API, because typically the API is always the slowest point of the applications. The UI, there's plenty of content CDNs, content accelerators out there that will speed up the loading of your website. But the funnel that gets stuck in is always that API portion. So this is why we're going to go from the manual portion to the automated testing to the load testing. So hopefully you guys have fun, and I will turn the time over to Bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. All right, good to be here. I'm Bill Witt. I've been in QA, wow, probably since about 2005 in various different roles. I I've loved it. I've stuck with it, and I'm glad I did because it just keeps getting better and better. It's just a fun career to have. I've worked with Matt Chang in the past at New Skin. Um, and at the moment, I am working at the state through a contract company called STG, Software Technology Group. Excellent group of guys. If you guys are interested in looking for new careers. So basically today we're going to go over, as Matt said, we're going to be looking over APIs here. A lot of times with testing, there's a lot of focus on Selenium and GUI testing, and it's important, but all the really important stuff is happening here in the API. The API is what's basically sending messages back and forth from your computer to their server and back and forth. So we wanted just to kind of illustrate what we have with APIs here, or what we're actually seeing. So here's Walmart, just regular website. I have Firefox open here. If any of you have Firefox, that's good. If you have Chrome, that's fine. I'd recommend one of those two, maybe even Brave. Do all of our listeners here have a browser open? Because we will want you to follow along if you could. Kind of go through the same stuff here.
Yeah, speak up if you want Bill to slow down a little bit.
Yes.
We want this to be more interactive and hands-on.
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to have some interaction here. I'd love to have questions. There are no dumb questions. Questions are best way to learn. So please raise your hand or just call out. I'd be happy to address that, as with Carlos and Matt. So here we go. Here we are at the Walmart website, and you can already see we're getting a bunch of RESTful calls here. The way that we get to this, if you haven't already, you want to hit your F12 on your keyboard, and that will open up your web developer. Now I'm using Firefox. Firefox is a good one because it makes it really clear as to what calls and what status codes are coming back and forth. So if you want to start there, that's probably a good way to go. And notice is, I'm going to clear this out.
Hey, Bill, do you want to show everybody how to open up that developer tool in Chrome as well?
Yeah, let's do that. Thank you. Let's bring this here. Do the same thing in Chrome. Okay. So if you hit F12, or you can come here and you can go to, let's see, more tools. We want our developer tools. That's also something that you can do to open that up. You guys can do that. Once we come into this screen, you're going to be on your network tab. And let's see if I can do both of these so you can see both. All right, so here's Firefox on the left, Chrome we have on the right. And we're going to just open that up. If you're in Firefox, you can come here and you can go down to, let's see, more tools again, and web developer tools. It looks like you have a shortcut with Control-Shift-I, or you can use F12. So that's how we get there. The next thing you want to do after you're on the network tab is you want to click Fetch or XHR, and this is going to display the API calls that we want to see, the endpoints, and in Firefox you get status codes. You want to have that. If you have Chrome, it'd probably be good to set the preserve log. That way you don't lose the calls that you're looking at when you go to another page.
Hey, Bill, what does XHR stand for?
Yeah, so XHR is the XML HTTP request. So the XML HTTP request is, let's see, how would, what's the best way to explain that? Could you go into more detail on that for us, Matt?
Yeah, so the XML HTTP request, that's the standard method for communication. So that's they call it the CRUD operations.
Mhm.
You have a create, which is a post, a read, which is a get, an update, which is a put, and a delete, which is delete if you want to get rid of data. Um, some developers will use a get to do a delete or a post to do a delete. There's not really like a good way to do it. There's always a best practice, but that's what the column that Bill is trying to show here is that there's a CRUD operation that you can see what it is. The difference between a get you can put data into the query parameter. In the post, you put the data that you want to request into a message body, and same with the put and deletes.
Okay, so that basically breaks it down. When we're doing API calls, you have your get, which Matt was just explaining. It'll get information and bring it back to you. A post will let you create something new. A put will update something, and a delete will delete something. We're going to go into more detail on this with another website that we have, but we're also going to go to Rock Auto. If you want to navigate to that in your browsers, let's go to the beginning here. Keep in mind you can clear out what you see here in the network tab by hitting your trash can, or in Chrome you can just hit that play button. Okay, so let's say we're doing a search for Ford, for example. Okay, so when we did that, it set up a search. And it was a post because we were sending, well, so the post that we have has this payload here, and the payload contains our search term, which you can see here as text. It's Ford. These come in, they come as JSON strings usually. You can sort of see that a little bit over here. But when we select one of these posts, let's go into something further here. Let's look at an escape, and we're going to go turbocharged. And so here you're getting the JSON, which is the JavaScript object notation. And with this guy, you're going to have all the information pertaining to, in this case, the turbocharged Escape 2017 Ford. Let's explain this part right here. So you have headers. These headers, first it'll tell you which verb you're using. In this case, it's a post. The scheme is HTTPS, which you see in the browser address there. And then the host, and then we'll also have, let's see if I can find one that actually is showing us an endpoint here. We go over to this Google Chrome tab. It lays it out a little bit differently, a little bit more clear. So here we're on Walmart, and we've got a collector, and that's given us a request URL. And this is what you're going to use to send your request to. This is its address. So it's almost like sending a mail to this address. And when it receives it, it'll tell you whether or not it was successful. In this case, 200 is successful return. And you also have your payload here. And the payload will show what's been sent. Let's see. Oh, I wish we had a little bit better examples here. But you kind of get the idea. Let me come here so you can see a little bit better explanation of these guys. If you come to fakerestapi.azurewebsites.net index HTML, this website is a fake website that has so this is a Swagger doc that has all the different API calls that you can make to this interface. With this activities here, this is the first bunch. We have our activities, and we have a get, which is getting information post, giving new info, put, updating, or deleting. We can take a look at these here in the browser. Become activities, and you can see you've got your status code there. We've got our endpoint. And this is the endpoint that's getting that information from. To this point, do we have any questions as to what APIs are or what's happening in the browser? All right.
Hey, Bill, I think maybe we want to talk about exactly why it is important to test APIs. So I don't know if you guys have seen, but one of the things that we've done in the past is that people talk about monolith applications where they have a full application, including the front end, back end, the whole entire MVC framework, which is a model view and a controller. And in those monoliths, it's hard to develop and release code. So you might have 20 different teams that are working on that monolith. And at certain points of your release cycle, everybody's touching that code somewhere. And so one person who touches a footer might be having another person touching the footer. You have features that might get overwritten. You might have code that gets missed out. So now that everybody's starting to migrate over to a more of a microservice front end, where you might have the header that is a functional is an app by itself. The search is an app by itself. The footer is an app by itself, and there might be a route, and that route might be an app all by itself as well. So with those different routes, there's different services that is sitting behind it that can, inject data, inject templates of the website, inject the layout and whatnot of the website. So that kind of helps out so that the teams can deploy and release a code independently versus doing a monolith and having things break. So
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Matt. All right, so what do we do with this? Let's first demonstrate this this API that we have from Fake Rest. The first one that we have is a series of activities. Your API address that we're going to map to is, you can see it here in the get. In that get URL. This is, if you look here, it's /API/v1. That is the address of the API where it's taking the calls that you're sending to it. The endpoint is activities. And so when it hits activities, this activities endpoint will hit code that is then connected to a database, most likely. And when you run these calls, it'll return that information. So to demonstrate that, there's this framework called Swagger, and Swagger allows you to put into a website all your different calls that are working for your application. So here we can see we got the get, the post, the put, the delete, and we'll go through each of these guys. When you come here, you can say try it out. Do I have a sidebar? I can put this in so everyone can go to that. Let me copy this and I will put this in the chat window so you guys can navigate there. All right, so the first one is a get. So we want to get information. It's just going to hit this endpoint activities. When we hit execute, this is what's returned as the response. And this is what you can see in your browser under the response tab. This is the exact same thing that you're seeing here. As far as a payload goes, when you're doing a get, you're obviously not sending anything, you're getting something. So there's no body to send. We saw kind of here where you run a query in a search engine would be a post because you're sending a query. You're saying, this is what I want. Let's go back. So for our get, there's nothing to send. We're just getting. So if you look here, this is the list of activities. Now, this is a fake website. It's just to demonstrate APIs and how they work. So we've got from activity 1 to activity, I think I have 30 of them here. And this is basically just returned in an array. So you can kind of see that. If I were to expand this, we could take let's open a notepad. Notepad is handy, just any kind of editor when you're messing around with these types of things. So we go copy, put that notepad, you can get a better look at it. As you see, what was returned here is also returned in the browser. And this is all the data that we got. We're going to show you how to do this in Postman, not just in Swagger. So this is kind of leading up to that. All right, so that's your get. Next, we'll do a post. A post would be something like a new activity. We hit try it out. And we can change this title because when you send a post, you're actually adding a new member to this list. So let's say we have ID 31, and we can say another new activity. I'm going to hit execute. It sends it, and it returns the response is what we were hoping to get, which is it took our post, it added it to that array, and it said, okay, this is what I just added to the array, kind of confirming that this is exactly what we wanted to put there. You have your status code, which indicates a 200, which is a success for an OK. And so there's your post. If you do a put, actually, let me try running execute. Now this is kind of a fake website. I'm hoping that put will add it. Didn't. If this were a real website and we had just added that additional activity, it would have shown up here in this list when you run the get again, because it had added something new there. And that's with your post. So then you have your put, and the put will update one of these members. So instead of adding something new, it will change one. So let's say we wanted to change 27 to just rename that activity. So on our put, try it out. And we want to manipulate ID 27. And I want it to say once we have that, we hit execute, and the response will be an updated member. Now, being a fake API here, they need to keep it so that it doesn't actually update and change their data. Otherwise, people would, they wouldn't have the demo data that they're using. In an actual update, it would show that ID, since we put 27 here. It would show 27, and then it would show that the title has been changed from activity 27 to updated activity. Are there any questions so far on these Swagger APIs and how you can test your REST API that way?
I'm actually curious how many people that are currently here, how many people are looking at this and going, Bill, you're going way too slow. Or if they're going, I have no idea where we're at right now.
Yes, very good question.
So folks in the audience, who's looking at this and you're familiar with Swagger, you're familiar with Postman? How many of you have that? Even raise your virtual hand if you know how to do that.
Hey, we got one.
Okay. And in case you don't know how to, in Zoom on the bottom, there's a little reactions button. You can click on that reactions button and put stuff in there. So, ta-da. Okay, what I want to make sure we avoid is we're breezing through something because it may be really familiar for us, but then we completely lose the audience because you're not familiar with these things and we breeze past it and now you're like, crap, I don't know where I'm supposed to go from here.
Yeah.
So please, if you're feeling like you have questions, you have concerns or whatever, please come off mute or post the question inside the chat and we will make sure to pivot to that and help you out. Okay.
So
Thank you.
Looks like we've got a couple responses here in the chat. So Cherry says quite familiar. Emily Evans says familiar with Swagger, but not so much with Postman. Randy, not quite familiar, but have heard about Postman and what can be done with it. Lexus, more familiar with Postman. It looks similar. I don't know what that name is. Maybe possible we can do a demo basic auth and any other API with auth. Okay, so it sounds like you guys understand for the most part APIs and what's going on here. So let's go to Postman. Is that kind of the consensus? If anyone can raise hands on their virtual board there, would you guys like to? All right, from what I can see, it looks like, okay, good. Well, let's do the fun stuff then. That's our intro. Let's go to Postman and bring that over here. So has everyone downloaded Postman? Does everyone have that? I'm assuming so. If you haven't, you can obtain that here at this website. I will post this in our chat room here. You follow this link. You can download that. I'm assuming everyone has it. Okay, so let's go back to our Postman. Postman's amazing, guys. I mean, it's free, so everyone's like, oh yeah, Postman, whatever, but it really is a very powerful IDE. It can do some really amazing things with APIs and with your tests. So first thing we're going to do is in Postman, you can come to workspaces and hit create new workspace. And this is going to give you a clean slate. If you already have Postman installed, or if you've already been using it, this will allow you to just have a clean slate that's just focusing on what we're doing right here. So we can call this our API running, and we'll make this public, or I'll make this public. We'll just hit create. And there we go. We have brand new workspace. So what do we do with this workspace? Well, we need to test our API. So let's pull in an API. You can add these manually if you'd like. You can say I want to get and I want to go to whatever URL and endpoint and I want to get back information. But what we're going to do instead is using this fake API swagger that we just showed you guys. If you come to this right here, go ahead and click under fake REST API, click that guy. You're going to get a bunch of stuff that's just JSON. This is the API, and it's cool because Postman can import all this. So what I want you to do is select and copy that this web address, which is the API address. I'm going to put that here in the chat room so you can grab that. Once you have that, we're going to click import. And since that's a link, it's an address, we're going to choose link. Post that in there. Continue. All right, so it can see, now let's see, where did I just put that? You can see it found the name of the API. It's using OpenAPI 3.0, import as API. For this lesson, we're not going to do documentation. We're going to select test suite. And we hit import. Now watch the magic. This is great because usually when you're testing APIs, if you don't have something like a Swagger doc, you have to enter these manually one at a time for each of the endpoints that you're trying to test. All right, so now we have this collection here. Well, this is the API. It's also put in a collection of REST requests. So if we come back here and we want to do our comparison, we have activities has been imported, authors has been imported, books, users, and so we've now got all these different API calls that we can make. And it's just been imported from that address. So what do we do with that? Wonderful, right? Well, the first thing, well, in this case, there's no authentication. It's a public API, so you don't really need any authentication there. But there are circumstances where you would need to authenticate and authorize the use of the API. Now, this one does not seem to have.
I think you can still add one, Bill. You could probably just do like a basic auth.
Like this one?
Change it to basic auth and let's take a look at the basic auth.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the basic auth, you typically use a username and password, and the password, just put in test and happy for the username. So test is the username, happy is the password. Yeah, either way, just put test. Click on the show password really quick, Bill. So that one will show the password as test. Now run the request. Well, actually, you did it at the collection level. But if you did it at the API level, the individual API, go to your headers really quick, Bill. And click on authorization.
Oh, yeah.
And then inherit from parent. Click on the send. Let's see what happens. I think you should send that, value.
Before that, okay, before we do the send, we also need to add our base URL. So we discussed that just a little bit when we were looking at one of our websites. When I pointed out that you have the, let's see if I can find that guy. All right. Where we looked at one of these posts, we went to the headers and you have the, let's see, I don't want that. All right. So here's this address. This is the API address and the endpoint. So if you look here, it's saying we know there's a base URL. You haven't put it in yet, but here's the path to that API plus the endpoint. So what does this weird looking thing here. We've got like these two brackets, base URL and two brackets. This is an environment variable. And this is really cool part of Postman as well. Let's go ahead and do this. So is everyone keeping up here with Postman, or have we all imported? Okay. I guess if you haven't, let me know.
Yep.
All right, so next thing we're going to do, we have this collection. Let's go to environments. And we need to create a new environment. So there's a new environment. You can call it whatever you want. In this case, we'll call it the training environment. And then we'll come back to Matt's send. So this just needs to be set up because what Matt was saying before was we want to send this request, but right now it doesn't know what base URL is. As you can see here, it's just blank. So we'll come back to this environment, test environment, and here you can set up any variable you want. So come back here. Base URL is the name of the variable. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to come back to environments. There we go. There's our variable. Now we need to add the actual address. Copy that. And put that in initial value. So what we have now, so you have the address here of this API, and they've already put in the /API/version1 and the endpoint. But what we've done now in our environment is we have added a value to this variable. So we hit save. We come back to our collection, and we have to use our environment that we just made. So we go up here, instead of no environment, click training environment, and there it populates that part of the address. So now it knows what to do. All right, so let's see. Now just go back. Okay, so we have a couple questions here. Let's see here. Carlos, you want me to go over these guys or read these out loud? Okay, so let's see. From Nathan Schurtz, it says, if we have our own Express server, is there an easy way to create an API JSON? I would redirect to either Matt or Carlos on that one, as far as creating an API.
Sorry, what was the question?
It says if we have our own Express server, is there an easy way to create an API JSON?
I think Carlos answered it in the chat.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh, I didn't see that. All right, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
thanks.
to give a bigger answer to it, almost every single web framework has the ability to create an open API file, or in this case, we're calling it a Swagger file. I'm not too familiar with Express. That's why I put that link in there. Like, hey, here's an example of how you can do it with it. But I don't know if Express can just do it without that. That I don't know. But in Autobots, we've usually done things with Python and Fast API, and Fast API builds it for you. Like it's already built in, so you kind of get it for free. But it's very common because most web APIs are built on this Swagger open API specification. So everyone kind of understands what a GET request is, what a POST request, and we all kind of build it in that same format. So that's why we're able to kind of have the same lingo when we're talking about APIs, because we're all kind of following the same standards, which is really nice. So hopefully your web framework provides something like the Swagger UI Express thing to generate it for you automatically, and then you can import it into your Postman client.
Awesome. Great, thank you, Carlos. let's come back to authorization, because there, especially at my work, there's even developers that don't know how to authenticate their Postman. So this is probably a pretty good point to focus on. OAuth 2 is what a lot of people use. And let's just say you're at work and they want you to set up Postman. You have the API that either you've imported from Swagger or you've added it manually, and now you go to run your stuff. You put into your environment, you've added the correct address, but it's not running, right? And it's like, well, shoot, why isn't it running? Well, a lot of let's see. You're going to have to configure authentication for OAuth in a lot of places. At least where I work at the state, they use OAuth. When you do this, you want to pick the top of your collection here, because yes, you can do it for each of these calls, but then you'll have to keep doing it over and over again, and that's why it has inherit auth from parent. But if we come here, this is typically how you're going to set this up. You'll hit edit token configuration, so you can get in and do that. Looks like I have some stuff from previous authentication, but if we take this and go to the config setup, you can say, so let's say test token. This can be anything. This really doesn't matter what you put. Usually you're going to have authorization code. There's other ways you can do this, but use authorization code. You've got a callback URL. This will work. You need to make sure that your admins have this callback URL set up so it's recognized. They may have a different callback URL, but this is, if you're going to use the default one here in Postman, you'll have to let whomever is over your project know that you need their callback URL. So we've also got the auth URL, which you would also get from your company. You put in whatever that happens to be, your access token, and then you'll typically have a client ID and you'll have a client secret for your project, and that would put here. You'll put in your scope, which is typically like your profile, an open ID or email, and then it depends. If you run this and it fails, it may be one of these two. I've got one set that works with the basic auth header. I've got another that does client credentials and body. So if this were a real world scenario, we'd hit get new access token, and that token would go out and find it. And you probably go to an authentication page if you have to authenticate for a VPN at your work. It would bring up that browser, you'd add it, and then this would find that token, which is a JOT, a JWT, and then it would put that right in here. That's a lot. I don't know if that makes a ton of sense, but does that help a little bit with some of the authentication questions and tokens? I'm just reading the comments here. Okay, so that's something that you may have to work out with your architect or your DBA if this is the situation you're in. Yeah, and someone said it's easier to do in code. Yes, yeah, it would be a lot easier doing that in code rather than Postman. But all right, so let's come back to this. All right, now as we said before, we don't actually need authorization for this guy because it's not, it doesn't need authentication. It's public, so we'll just turn that off. I hope that was better than clear as mud, But so let's take a look at some of these requests here. Do you have any questions about either environments or collections, environment variables, authorization? Is there anyone else that would like to? Any questions on that? I'm just looking at the chat window. If anyone has something, feel free to type it in there. Okay, well, so let's go ahead and send. As you see, we've now got our API address, and we've retrieved what we just saw in the website. So when we did that get, hit execute, we got this array of different activities. Oh, I guess this, sorry, this is authors. So we had this list of activities, and that's what we just retrieved here. So that's working. So the components here are your address, your endpoint, you have your base URL that we've set up in the environment. And we have our endpoint, and we have our verb, which is get, and we've just retrieved all this here. So that brings us to tests. Let's do some tests here. One cool thing about Postman is that you could write tests that does expects or assertions. That's pretty helpful when you're wanting to verify that you're getting what you're expecting there. So let's say we're going to make a constant, and we'll call it JSON. And it's as easy as this. You just say PM response .json. What's that do? That just put this essentially into this variable. So if we want to see that, we can just say console.log, and JSON. We'll just put that in there. Okay, so JSON's going to have this entire response. It's captured with our tests. And now we're going to output that to the log. So we have a log here. You can open that on the bottom. Let's hit send and see what we get. And here we have that our JSON string. And let's see what that response was. You can open that up. And here you have that same list. So what's so exciting about that, right? Now you have saved all this just in this variable, and you can start doing a little bit more investigation or into that string and check that you're getting what you're expecting. I'm going to move to a previous collection that I did here, and it's got a couple more examples. Just I don't bore you with trying to start it all up. So here we're doing that again. We have a constant JSON. You can write tests by simply saying PM test, and then you have your parentheses, and you can name it whatever you'd like. So first test, and then we want function. There's shorthand that you can use that makes this even simpler, but we're just going to say function lambda. If you want to do lambda, sorry. you don't have to specify a function. You can just go ahead and say, this is saying, I'm going to have a function. This is what it does here. Okay. And in this case, let's say we want to verify that our status was 200. Let's say PM start. Response code. Let's see. And it's got some syntactic sugar here, so you can say it's super readable. So you can say expect this response code to be. Just gonna cheat from down here. I'm going to say one of these things. So we're going to use one of, and this is kind of cool because you can do more than one status code if you're looking for that. So we'd say I'm expecting either 200 or a 201. But we kind of want to see this fail. So let's say we're looking for either a 400 or a 403. I can comment the rest of these guys out. So do this here. All right, so we're just going to run this one test. And as we hit send, it's going to take our response, it's going to check its code, and it's going to say, I'm expecting this to be either 400 or 403. And we know we're going to get a 200 as we got here. Let's see what it does when it fails. Hit this guy. And we have our test results. So typically, you're usually just looking at the body, but since we have a test now, you can go to your test results and it's failed. My first test, as we've labeled it here, and we expected this code to be 400 or 403, which it's not. And so it failed. And here's the code that it retrieved, 200. So in this case, we want this to now pass, say 200 or 201. Of course, it's not a 201, so that's not going to do anything, but it will pass on the 200. Okay. And so that passed. Any questions there?
I do want to add something.
Yeah, please do.
Put your cursor on line 6, Bill, really quick for me.
Yeah.
Okay, and then in the right-hand side, scroll down those snippets. And I think there's one that says right there, status code is 200. Click on that.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to cheat and you just want to do a very basic validation, this will add a test into your function so that it'll just test for a 200 status. I talked to a lot of people who say they test APIs and they use Postman. And I asked them, what are you testing? What do you verify? What is your job there? They said, well, I run the command and I check for 200 status. And they call that automation, which in a sense it is kind of automated that it checks for you. But when you have an easy function like this that you just click in there, I don't deem it as a real good validation of your API test, because you saw that Phil just clicked that button and he's validating 200. So we want to get deeper into validation. We want to get deeper into validating what is coming back on the response. So, but this is just a quick little way to kind of cheat and get yourself started.
And that's a great point. Postman really gives you ample opportunity to learn here. I mean, they're giving away snippets that pretty much just did what we did, and like Matt was saying. And so, yeah, it's pretty easy to do some of the stuff. And so, basically, you know, if someone's saying, "Oh, I'm just checking codes," you aren't really doing, you know, really tough tests. It gives it away. So let's look at some of these other ones that we can do.
Before you jump off that test right there, Bill,
Yes, sir.
hover over on your left-hand side by your API. Yeah, go up to the very top where it says Fast API Web and see those three triple dots.
Yeah.
Click on that. See where it says Run Collection. So if, let's say this whole entire collection has a set of tests in it. For every endpoint, there's a test. You can actually run the collection. It will run through every request and check that status for that test, and it will return you how many passed, how many failed. So if you have 100 different requests inside this collection, you run that full collection of tests, you basically completed your whole entire day's worth of work within a matter of a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty cool, right?
Yep.
Excellent. All right, thank you. So let's see. You can also use try catches, which it's kind of fun to do. You can log your error. So let's say that again we're getting a 200. Let's just fail this really quick and say we want a 400, so we can see a test fail and comment those guys out. All right, so we're going to run status. This is a different status code. We're going to go beyond that because obviously status codes are important, but not super important. We just want to demonstrate what happens with the try catch here. So run that, and if you look down here in our console, I would like to open up. Not do. All right. Okay, so since in our catch here, we said, okay, if we get an error, go ahead and throw that into the log, show our stack trace. So you can get a lot more information here. You got your message. This is what we expected. This is what we got. And then you have your stack trace here, so you can navigate through that to pinpoint any bugs or errors that you might have. That's good to know about. See. Any questions on that? It's not too exciting, but ability. All right. So let's skip that one. All right, so we're going to check activity. So here's another test. You just name your test. You can do a lambda here. If you don't want to do a lambda, you just say function. Do it that way. That works as well. It's just shorthand. And we're going to say we expect this JSON to contain activity 2. So go back to our body. We expect it to contain activity 2. Also, at this point, we can kind of traverse our JSON and print that as well. So let's just do this so you can see that. So test results. All right, we expected theory to include activity 2. Actually expected it to find that. You see something wrong there, Matt? I swear this was working just the other day here.
I think you might need to do a JSON stringify. That will convert that object into a string, and then you can just do a contains. I think it might be a stringify, and then just wrap that around your JSON object.
like that.
I think so. Carlos, have you tried this before?
Nice. This is working yesterday.
We'll figure
No,
it
I
out.
don't do a whole lot of automation inside of Postman.
Because it's easier to do it in real code.
Correct.
Right. Because,
If you want to, Bill, you can go on to the next example, and then I'll find something for you.
all right. Sure we got it. Let's skip this one. I'll show you guys this in a sec. There's Postman does have a collection of variables that you can use to fake data. I'll come back to that in a second. What I wanted to show you here is some of its visualization that it can do. Uncomment this guy. And so we're going to have a test called visualizer. And first of all, we need a template variable, which is basically this is a table that we want to import all of our, well, whatever we want into this table. So we've got our template and we've got response here, and I'll explain all this in a second. So we have two headers in this table that we're making. One is title, one is due date. And I'm doing that because this is what we're getting back in our response. And I just like it to show in a table. So we have activity one, then we have due date. And what it's going to do is for the response, it's going to do a for each. It's going to look through all those responses and it's going to put the title and the due date. If you notice, we have these double curly braces here. This initiates the for loop, and you can see it ends here. When you're wanting to pinpoint different variables within, or I'm sorry, keys, you can call them by name. So here we have title and due date. So we have this key, and it's going to give the values for these keys. And we end the table. That's our template there. So to use our visualizer, you can say visualizer set your template. Then a response, which it's going to for each on response. We're going to assign this same thing that we did here that we're using to manipulate the JSON. All right, so let's try running that. Okay. We'll hit send. When we go to visualize, we have a nifty little table here. Let's just put all this into. And there's tons of different things you can do with this. Like I was saying, this is a lot more powerful than people realize. You can do bar graphs, you can do any type of, they do heat maps, and all you need to do is just make the template for it and then tell it where to put the data that it's getting based on the key names. I'll do that for you. So it's just created a table with the activity titles, or the titles, which is the activity, and the due date. That's kind of fun. All right. Would you guys like to see, let's see. So we have a question. With this, any insights on security testing aspect for the APIs, tips for breaking it? Matt or Carlos, would you have any insights on that for security testing APIs?
Yeah, typically we do. We can probably dive into a little bit more with serverless artillery. I know with serverless artillery, there is a library called monkey test, and that will inject random different values inside your query parameters. So in this example with Bill, if you do a post, the post, you can say, I want a random value inside here. Like in this example here, that TD title, that could be a random value that's being injected, and that will just get replaced over and over again. The test will run through all the different variations. I haven't found anything for exactly like that in Postman, but I'll keep on looking. So back to your other example, Bill, with your text. Your text validation, it's actually pm.expect pm.response text to include.
Did I already have that up?
I don't know. I don't remember if you saw that, but I'll post it in this chat here. So there you go.
Okay. All right. So Matt's just giving me another test. We can put. Let's do that. Trying to. All right, so this is just, is it the right one? Yep, okay. So this is what Matt just sent me. So you have your test name, and we're expecting the response text. And it's awesome how readable this is. So you just say expect the PM response text to include, and then we have a string we want to search. And we were trying to do this just a few seconds ago. So we're going to call it activity 2. That's what that. Okay, body matches string. It was found. You can see that. Here. So this just searched that entire JSON string and was able to verify that we do have activity 2. And there's several other things you can use here. I would suggest that you go to, let's see, the Learning Center in Postman. And let me put that in our chat room. You get quite a few.
Bill, do you want to show them how to use that pre-script?
Yeah. Let's see. Yes. Let's see. Pre-request script. I haven't used this a lot, so if you want to walk me through this, we can do this as well. That's fine.
Hang on a second. Give me bring up my example that I had. I think I might have destroyed it from yesterday. I probably did. Dang it.
Oh, so we just had another comment here. Sorry, I forgot to mention, was asking in general. Not a big fan of doing automation in Postman. Most people aren't. They want to put it in their other IDEs, which we'll go to that in a second. So maybe Ruby or Java. We'll explore that. So here's something cool about Postman that you may not know. There's this code. It's code sidebar. And when you click it, you can have it translate your request into several different languages. So let's see, did we mention Ruby? I don't know if Ruby's in here. But let's say you wanted a curl. That's your get request for curl. Let's say we're in Java. I happen to be using OKHTTP. Oh, yeah, there is a Ruby. So there's your Ruby for this get request. I use OKHTTP, so that's the code to set this get request up in Java. And I mean, just take a look here. Like you've got just about any language you want. Let's try Python. Python request. So it's kind of cool to be able to import the entire API and say, okay, I need a hint. How would I put this in my code? I like to use Python. Okay, there it is. Or I use Ruby. How would I do that? All right, there's the sample. Or Java in our case. And we get also the same. Okay. Does that sort of answer that?
Yeah, Bill, do you want me to share some stuff here?
Yeah. Oh, were you going to share something?
Yeah, let me share something really quick. These are some quick pointers and gotchas that'll help you guys speed your process up. Let's see. I want to share a portion of my screen.
And this is the pre-request script.
Yeah, I'll share my pre-request script too and how to utilize that. Okay,
Close that window.
okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this is a example of a pre-request script. So let's say I want to grab the latest, the highest activity in the list. So let's say I want to grab every time I run a test. I don't care how many objects are in the list. I just going to grab the last one to see what it is. So in this example here, I put the pm.send request, and I will put the URL. So I'm going to send I'm going to get all the activities that came back in the list. Notice there's a method get. I kind of just threw this in here. You can put headers in here if you want to. If you want to do a authorization, you can also do if I can spell tonight, authorization, and let's say you want to do a basic auth, so you can do basic auth, whatever your auth key is. So this is how you would add your request in there. Okay, I don't know if it'll work with it, but it should. Here I'm going to write another function, and here it says I'm going to grab the JSON response, and I'm just going to parse out the last highest object number. It's going to do a count for me on that JSON object. Here I'm going to assign the JSON length, which should be 30 in this example. It's going to assign it to ID, and then I'm going to add this ID to my environment variable. So this one here, I'm going to set the ID, which is the variable ID, and the value of what it is. So once I set this code here, it will allow this request up here to dynamically use that ID that it gets back. So in this example, if I run it, it will show 30. And let's say I want to do the second to the last one. I'll just do a -1 there. I think that should work. So notice now it shows the 29. And let's say I want to do 5, -5. So now you can see I'm just randomly picking these values here to inject into this activity to show me the objects. And let's do some other stuff. Let's see what happens when I do a +5. So in this example, we can generate the handling for out of bounds. If there's not an object there, we need some type of data that came back to it. So that's what this will do. All right, so I'm going to share with you guys another secret that I've learned this in the past, and I've always used it. And this is one of those tricks. So let's go to where's that website? And for those of you who are on this call, this is actually one of my interview questions because whenever people tell me they're testing APIs, I need to make sure they understand how to build their own APIs. So let's say I want to run this author ID. So I'm going to do the author ID, and I'm just going to pass a value in of, how come I can't enter that one? Let's go to this one. Get activity. Oh, try it out. Change this to 5 and execute. So any web page that you can generate the XHR or whatnot, you can actually see the request here. Here's your basic structure. You need the request URL, you need your CRUD operation, you need your status code. So let's say the developers didn't build you out a good Swagger document, and you want to pull this into your Postman. You can actually right-click on on the request, go to copy, and of course, in my example, here, let me okay, can you guys see that pop up that just came up?
Yeah.
Okay. If you go to copy and select this curl C bash, that will grab the whole entire request. And now I can just go into Postman, and I will do a raw text. and just paste this whole entire thing and hit import. And now I have the exact query that just came in. And now I don't have to worry about building my own request here. So that's a little quick way to cheat. So now if I want to pull up the ID9, I can do that and it'll work. So little quick little pointer. So let's say we're testing, I think Bill's example, what was your example? Rock Auto.
Yeah.
So let's just go to Rock Auto really quick. And this will be the last little demo part that we'll do tonight. Got more to share next time, but we don't show everybody's secret. So let's just clear this, and we're going to search for part number 1. And we'll click on search. So there's that query. It looks really nasty because now if you look at this, you're like, well, I got this whole entire payload, and I have to copy every one of these little payloads in there. And same with all this authentication stuff and all this stuff. It makes it really hard. So we'll just do the same example again. Copy ccurl bash, and we'll import. And boom. And now I can do whatever I need to. So here's a body. It's a nasty body in here because it is a form data that didn't get transposed correctly. So there's some gotchas in here. So with the form body, typically it's a key value pair. You can say text. I think you can do spark plug. So there are some times where this does not work correctly. So this time I know it's text because I was looking at this page earlier, but the key value here is text. You can type in search plug, and you can do visualize.
I think you want preview.
Oh, preview, and it kind of gives you a bunch of data right here, and looks like it tried to search for something. It's not very pretty.
Yeah.
But the way it is, because there's a bunch of Ajax that's being executed and whatnot. But this would be how something you can just cheat on Gravity's requests here. Okay, next week we will. I know we kind of showed you we're going to write this into code, but Bill will show you how to get this integrated with unit test or JUnit or some type of test runner inside of a Java project. So that will be next week. So if nothing else, we will see you then.